Hi, everybody. Welcome to Film Talk Weekly. I'm joined by co-host Gary Farmer. And I want to remind you all again to like and subscribe. RogerEbert.com says AMC's riveting murder mystery Dark Winds reclaims the Western. Rolling Stone raves it makes native characters stars of their own story. And we're spending the hour with the director of Dark Winds, which premieres on AMC tomorrow. That's Sunday, June 12th. And welcome to the show, Chris. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah, this is great to be here and see both of you guys, even though I see you guys quite a bit.
Yeah, Chris, it was a great night the other night, the opening here in Santa Fe. Thank you for bringing it home. And it was a great crowd. And unfortunately, the projector broke. We got all split up into three theaters. How was the night for you and the cast? And I know you know, from the social media, you guys had lunch with Robert, which tell us all about it.
It was a great Saturday. We screened in Texas at ATX. We opened the television festival there and had the world premiere, and then did a Q&A with Zahn and Kiowa and Jessica and Vince Calandra and Graham Rowland, which went really well. And then we came back here, and Saturday we did a toast, and we had Bob Redford and George and the cast. We did pictures of Beastly Books, which is George's bookstore, and we did some pictures, and then we went to dinner, and Zahn had a chance to sit and talk to Bob and George, and that was nice to see, and Kiowa and Jessica, and I had lobster, which was really nice.
Were you on the train, the new train that goes to Lamy?
We weren't on the train. No,
Oh, it looked like you were on the train. I was curious.
no, we were over at Coyote, and had a great dinner over there, and then we came back to Violet Crown and did the screenings, and I heard about the bulb just at the dinner there. I didn't even know about the bulb burning out on the main screen that we were going to screen.
Right.
Then somebody said that they're broke up into three smaller theaters, and so it was great. We came back there, and George then went from theater to theater to introduce the movie three times, and he was good. He said the same thing, so there was a consistency there, and he made some jokes, and then we screened on three different screens and had the party afterwards. It was great.
Yeah.
And
He's
then
a big fan of Tony Hillerman, of course. They were friends.
and then I heard our cast and crew and stuff were out at about in Santa Fe on I think Saturday night is what it was. They were out and about, all the usual haunts,
So, yeah, I mean, thanks so much for the invite. It was amazing to be there with all the cast and crew, to say hi to Zahn again. George R. R. Martin showed up, and you guys did a Q&A after the series as well. We watched the first two episodes, and I was just blown away. I think it really gives everybody a chance to reimagine these characters in a modern light. Plus, it's a period piece. Plus, it's a mystery. It's a cop drama. There's really a lot there for people to love, and I I just can't say enough good things about it. I know IndieWire gave it a grade of an A. So again, Chris, what an amazing night. And for everybody listening, Dark Winds premieres tomorrow on AMC and AMC Plus, I think their streaming service is called.
yeah.
So yeah, kudos to you, Chris. Thank you for. I know you've made other projects in New Mexico, but nothing quite this big. You put together a real dream team of heavy hitters with Robert Redford and George R. R. Martin. Is there anything you want to say about just the group of people that you worked with on this? I think we already talked about them a bit, but
Yeah, I mean it's such a group effort, and Sharon Henderson and Ryan Begay, like you said, and then the list goes on and on and on, including the crew, and getting Bob and George and Zahn and Kiowa and Jessica. I mean, it's just kind of like one of those rare things that you feel lucky, was able to come together. I made Hillerman 20 years ago, and had made Smoke Signals before that. And when we made Smoke Signals, we kind of felt like maybe we were ahead of the time, which was there wasn't all this, occupation with diversity and certainly not with authenticity. So, I just think that the time and the place was now, and now is the right time and place. And so, there is an element of fate, or just the stars aligned for everything to come together the way it did. So, we're kind of pinching ourselves, to get the good reviews and hoping for a second season. But I'm still so close to it. I haven't really digested that the reviews are good yet. So it's a great welcome gift. Really is a gift. And I mean, Gary, we did Smoke Signals 23 years ago or something, maybe longer. I think it was 20. We did it in 97, so that would be 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And Gary's been doing it longer than I have, and it's just the whole thing is a gift to get to do it, and then number two, to have any success at it, and then to have a group of people like this. You shake it up, and you hope that it turns out the way that you want it, and this one seems to have something good going for it.
I got to say, Chris, after the screening the other day, and then I went back home, and I had mentioned, oh, I did the Dark Wind, it was called, the original 1990 production, which Robert, of course, was involved, and it was directed by Errol Morris, probably famous for Blue Line, was it?
Thin Blue Line.
Also Pet Cemetery, the documentary, not the feature, but it was his first directorial effort. And I was fascinated, of course, when I started to watch, number one, that it was still available. And I had to pay like $10 for it, but I couldn't resist. And, just having watched yours, I watched the old film. I wondered, had you done the same with the original Dark Wind?
I don't know. I don't know. Are you saying the actual book Dark Winds that your movie was taken from?
Yeah.
Would I do it the same way?
No, I didn't say that. I just asked if you had seen the original Dark Wind before you made the series.
I saw it years ago. I haven't revisited it. I remember Lou Diamond Phillips and
Fred Ward,
Errol Morris. That must have been right after Powell Highway, or
we shot it in 1990 on the Navajo Res. It never did come out. It says 92, but I don't think it came out till 95. They swept it under the rug, and Arrow gave them a 4-hour cut, and I think they dismissed them, and they brought on some action guy. But Arrow was a real study of characters, so it was fascinating to watch. Now, I wanted to ask, because, the Dark Wind, and of course the series is called Dark Winds, which is, a broader stroke at Hillerman material. But the character Cowboy Dashi, of course, was the Hopi deputy in the original. And I saw that, like, Bernadette seemed to replace the Hopi deputy in the effort. Is that conscious, or?
Yeah, I mean, there was a real conscious effort to figure out how to get all three of those characters together, and which source material that would come from. It started out with Lee Porn, then it went to Chi, and then Bernadette was introduced, and then it was the amalgamation of all of them at times. And so we were trying to figure out, given the years, how do we put them together and when? We knew we wanted to start in the 70s or the early portion, so we started in 71, and we picked from mostly from Listening Woman. Listening Woman is the bed of that of the pilot episode in the first season, and then we put in some People of Darkness. And if we get a chance to do a second season, there's still more to mine out of that material. Specifically, there's more to mine out of People of Darkness, Colton Wolfe, Mary Landon. There's some really great elements, and we haven't, stripped the bone of that narrative source material in the mole people in the People of Darkness. And so we started with Listening Woman, People of Darkness, 1971, and composited those three characters so we could get off to a quick start. But it's interesting. How do you navigate those waters? And there are people now, including our writing team, that are trying to figure all that out, because it is somewhat of a puzzle. And now that we have a first season, we have a point of departure, but we have to certainly follow, and we want to be true to the Tony Hillerman books.
Yeah, for sure. It's fascinating. Of course, there's a long history there. We won't get into it here about the whole, what you can show or tell and what you should do that's right from certain cultural perspectives. And so it's very challenging material to work with in a contemporary form. I know your team was heavily Native American populated. Um, how was that for them? Of course, a lot of them weren't necessarily from the Hopi Navajo perspective in terms of what some of the stories do twist into. How was the obviously the writer team uh, wasn't necessarily experienced Navajo culture, but they were Native American. I just wondered how that worked for you. Was it as a creative effort? I'm not looking for the ad to hire native talent on your writing team, but that must have been really strong on your part.
I mean, I think this is a really good question. We had 5 Native American writers that comprised our writing room, and of those 5, 2 were Dene.
Oh, good.
And you start to go, well, what's the qualification for
Yeah.
what is this, woke code, and so I don't know what the line is, I don't know what the boundary is, and
Mm-hmm.
best practices are kind of what people like Zahn and the writing room and myself prescribe, and the people on Res Dogs and Rutherford Falls. I think we as creatives all prescribe what I would call best practices. And I think that everybody might have a different idea of what that line is. But that's what's exciting about what's happening right now, is that it's a new world in which we're writing those rules in that rule book, which might be that best practice. But I don't know what exactly, how many Native American people, constitutes a Native American behind the scenes crew. You know what I mean? I don't know, I was laughing at myself because if you take somebody like yourself or Wes or Tantu, and you could only play Cree or Cherokee or Cattarauga, based on who you are, that would be a really narrow margin of being able to play native too. So I just always say to myself, what are these potentially, dangerous boundaries that we're striving for? I think that as artists, we're the practitioners of the best practices. And I think some people might get it right and some people might get it wrong, but it's going to, there's going to become some general ideology of what the best practice is. And we're in this time and place where I think we're putting the work out, and we're going to go back and examine it for years to come.
I know that the Star Tribune said that you did the novels justice. So I think that's a big deal. And then Variety talked, they did a whole piece about how great it was that Zahn had this role and how good the project was for Native representation. So, yeah, I mean, I have this friend in Colorado and she's got a big crush on Zahn, and she knew his character in Longmire. She didn't know he was Zahn, and she was explaining to me how I knew him, and there was a picture of us all at the restaurant that was at the Drury Hotel. It's something different now, I think, but at the time, we were all there. So, I guess, can you speak on Zahn as a sex symbol, as a powerhouse of an actor, kind of doing his Clint Eastwood thing opposite Kaiwa?
I think they're all sex symbols. I think our three leads are gonna. I don't know what their status is. I know that Kiowa actually has a girlfriend, but I don't know what the other two status is. So I'm sure they could be dating if they wanted, but I'll leave that to them. But I think they're great sex symbols in the sense that they're just handsome and attractive, cast, and that goes for a lot of the other cast members as well. There's just something about seeing the their skin tone, like Gary, and just seeing it against the earth tones and the red sunsets, and they wear these beige suits, the cop uniform, and there was just something really just cinematic and warm about it. And when I was thinking about this, I thought about all those things, all those westerns and the John Ford movies, and we make reference to John Wayne, and you know, uh, but there's something I just have to say as I keep looking at this, there's so many familiar elements, like Zahn being a cowboy. He's like the moral compass, and you want to follow him, and he has his own personal three dimension, and Kiowa has some cockiness, and he's coming back home and trying to figure it out if he wants to live in the big world or come home. And these characters just have such a familiarity to me, and I just fell in love with them as I kept watching them. But it's like a western. I started out saying it was like a film noir, and I ended by saying it's a Native American southwestern film noir, because, and some of the reviews say as much, because there's so many familiar elements to this, but you haven't seen them all put together until now. So the other thing is we got to get Gary in there.
Well, I mean, the natural character is like Cowboy Dashie, the last year of retirement before he packs it in, right? The Hopi deputy shows up for. Of course, in the productions you did with PBS, and I think you directed all three, or did you just do
I
two of
directed
three?
two of the three.
Who directed the third? Do you remember?
There was a guy named Jan Eagleman, I think.
Hmm.
It was Jan Eagleman.
Anyway, I played Captain Largo in those.
You did. That's right. You played Largo.
Yeah, I played Largo,
And
who's
you said I got a real hot potato over here, and then you pursue you start to bawl Chi out. I remember
yeah,
that.
he's generally in a bad mood. It seemed Captain Largo, but he had a bigger. Well, he had a lot of grass to cover too. Mm.
Yeah, I remember you played Captain Largo.
Yeah, but I loved. I mean, I couldn't help but bust a gut when I watched the old 1990 Dark Wind, me playing Cowboy Dashie opposite, and I got second billing. I couldn't believe it over Fred Ward, the late Fred Ward. Everyone, he just passed away this year. Uh, a blessed actor. He was an interesting cat, and he put some great films out there in film history. But yeah, he played Leaphorn. And Michelle Thrush, I think we got her in there. She was playing basically Bernadette.
Was
Uh,
that in the Dark Wind?
yeah, yeah, it was. And Fidel was around, Morano, and I tried to get Charlie Hill to be I had a lot to do with casting because the casting director was just starting out then, and it was Dennis's ex Dennis Banks's ex that was getting most of the cast because she knew the community. I can't think of her name now,
Was
but
it? It
it
was
was
Michelle Thrush in the dark.
uh,
Michelle Thrush in the Dark Wind.
yeah, 1990, yeah.
Wow.
Because we had just come from shooting a short that Loretta Todd directed in Vancouver, and she played my sister, and I was exploiting wrestling with cultural themes, and my sister thought that was inappropriate. It was just a little half hour. Of course, I was dressed in spandex and everything. It was a lot of fun. But
Do you
yeah, I said, geez, I just worked with Michelle. She's pretty good. So they brought her down and hired her.
That's great, man.
Yeah, you got to take a look at it because I think the Cowboy Dash character is fascinating. He's a great guy. But I knew that the Hopi Navajo conflicts that exist, and there's one line in there said by the young boy about, Hopi vision or a Hopi version of, the medicine that they use, the bad medicine, the what's the term again they used in the story? Mm. Anyway, they had a funny reaction to the Navajo use of witchcraft, I guess. Yeah, so that I thought that was interesting, but I know it's still a challenging dynamic to pull off cinematically, and so everyone's happy and stuff.
Yeah, it was great to see you in the audience there. I didn't expect to see you in Linden. I walked in and there was Gary sitting there. I think you were one of the first people I saw, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a great crowd. And then everybody I saw in the crowd, I practically knew.
Yeah, I really wanted to see it. I was so excited, having not worked on it. I love supporting stories I'm not necessarily involved with, too. So, especially your work after such a long relationship we've had. So, congratulations.
I know, man. I'll never forget when we finished Smoke Signals and we screened it. I think at Sony in New York, the building there, and I said, "What do you think, Gary?" He said, "It was pretty good." And I was like, "Come on, man, give me some more." And Gary, you'd been around and done work in the past, and it was my first movie, so it was one of those things where I'm like, "Oh, come on, Gary, give me some more love." But you said, "Oh, it was okay."
Well,
And
you know what it was? I remember distinctly because I just could see the old people, the old New Yorkers walking out of the theater, and I can see they weren't, we didn't get them. We got them, but we didn't get them. And until you reconstrued the opening with the fire and set all that up, the ending just changed so dramatically. It was profound by the
yeah,
final cut.
I mean,
But
you're talking about the sensibility because when you play native content, some native content, it plays differently in different areas, and I know that just
it left the audience off, is what it did. But in the end, you twisted it around to be about, fathers and all that. That just
yeah,
sent it off in a powerhouse way.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we could borrow your character in Res Dog, and maybe you could bring Uncle Brownie and let us play with you over there. And
well, I remember Graham's version of one of the characters. I think you directed that episode where I believe Graham was like some kind of preacher man, but he was really a bootlegger or something. It was,
yeah, Graham played the preacher,
oh, the one that, yeah,
Slick Nakai.
yeah, he's not in it yet.
He's not in it yet, but Graham played Slick Nakai,
He was funny.
and he played a preacher with a satin blue shirt at times and big Billy Jack hat. And the thing he loved most about his character was his high water pants. His shoe was down here, and he thought it was really funny that his pants were up here. And he used to like to walk around and pull his pants up and his belt and all that stuff. And he carried on and did a great job as Slick Nakai. I had Wes and Graham playing off of each other in one scene in the PBS movie, and it was great to see those two together and just
Yeah.
them like riffing off of each other.
Yeah. Anyway, you ought to take a look at the old one for Cowboy Dashie's character. I'd love to rekindle that one for our last hurrah.
Cowboy Dashie.
Yeah.
Chris, in The Hollywood Reporter, Robert Redford talks about how he had purchased the rights to the books in 1986. He talks a little about how George R.R. Martin was a old friend of Hillerman's. I guess they met through Zelazny, the science fiction writer. Now, so you want to do a project here. You moved here about a decade ago. And so how does that work? You just call up George, call up Bob, and say, "Hey, this is what we're doing."
The way it came together was, after I'd moved to Santa Fe, I met you guys and um, Kathleen Broyles from the Sundance Institute had called me up in about 2015, and she said, we should go to lunch and see if we can, get Bob and George to talk about Hillerman. And I thought that was a great idea, but it was Kathleen's idea, and we ended up all going to lunch, and lo and behold, George was friends with Tony, and we didn't know that. When we brought up Hillerman, George said, "Oh, I was friends with Tony," because George has lived here since the 70s in Santa Fe, and evidently in the 80s they were part of an author's luncheon in Albuquerque that they would do each month. And so, before George had Game of Thrones and so on, he was, doing, Beauty and the Beast, and he was writing, pilots and episodic, television, and he was a writer that was part of the author's, local luncheon, and he was friends with Tony, and we didn't know that at all. And when we brought up Tony, he said, "Oh, Tony, I love Tony," and all this stuff. And by the end of the lunch, everybody was saying, "Hey, we should really explore this Hillerman again." And we left the meeting, and you walk away going, "Huh." And that literally was in 2015. So when you go, "Huh," that's a long huh. 7 years later, that's like huh, 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 huh. And it took 7 years from that meeting in 2015 to this point. And like I said earlier, it's just a gift every time you get to do it.
And Tony's got 18 novels, plus Anne's writing and has several novels out. So you've got 20 years of material there to make into television potentially. It's kind of exciting.
It is. Tony had 18 books on the Lee Pornchi characters. And like you said, Gary, Anne has done 7, and she's about to release her 8th. And so that's about 26, if I do the math right, books of source material. Some of them have been done. We did Thief of Time, and it's a question of, do we want to go back over some of the places we've been or not, and then making sure that we, marry the books together in which it's just Chi or just Lee Porn. So that kind of collapses the number because you got to put the two characters together, at least is my thinking. But I think Zahn, carries Lee Porn so well because you really want to know more about what this guy's history is and where did he come from and what makes him tick. And, in all reverence to Wes Studi, I mean, Wes, did the same thing. Wes really, I thought, carried the role of Lee Porn incredibly well. It was more a matter of, in the books, Chi and Lee Porn are in their respective 20s and 40s. And, that's kind of the point of departure. So now that this is the 3rd iteration of Hillerman, and it sounds like people are liking it, but I just kind of was laughing to myself and wondering, is there going to be a 4th somewhere that I won't be involved in? And, It's going to be, change characters, different native characters in 20 years that portray Chi and Leaphorn and so on. I mean, once we got to this third iteration, I'm like, there's a pattern here somehow. There's some pattern with this source material. It's great source material, but I think what we've done now, and this is where it's different. Gary, you started this part of the conversation, which is, these Native American writers and performers and directors now that we have, and even showrunners. They're re-envisioning that source material and really owning it, and I think that's a great thing. I would hate to get to a point where we take this idea of everything has to be a monolithic of native utopia, in which we don't, have the presence of the overculture, because it's just a reality. I mean, when Zahn's character says stuff like, talks about the boarding schools, and they talk about the forced sterilization, those are just realities that people live with in their communities, which people say, okay, it's not something that preoccupies them. It's just, these are some of the circumstances of the time. And I think that, to not have the non-native component in there is a little strange, because you have to have something to compare at times. I mean, that's just why, this series is so interesting, is because we have native protagonists that don't need a white protagonist in order to exist. Yeah. I mean, it's just an incredibly fertile time right now, in which we're writing the book as we speak, I think, with, Rutherford Falls and Res Dog and now Darklands, and there'll be more to come in the coming years. And I just think that the community will write the book. I think in other filmic places, when I was at NYU in the early 90s, it was Spike, and he was the Black filmmaker, the African American filmmaker. And I think with native content, it's more about the community of representation. And that's really the way it should be. Mm-hmm. I don't think it should be a one person that say, this is the definition.
Right.
We are an enigma. And that's one of the most interesting things, I think, when you meet other Native people all the time, and, you compare, communities and practices and society, and there's a lot of similarity, but there's a lot of differences. And I think that really our representation should be from the perspective that it's a community of filmmakers.
Very good. I know that the vision for the project is kind of been with you for a number of years now, and I couldn't help realize that watching your directorial efforts on this particular series. So the 2 episodes I saw, a lot of close-up, it seemed, sticking with these characters through thick and thin. I mean, one of the most impressive scenes was when Jessica cleaned herself after witnessing some frightening scene. And I don't know, that was a beautiful scene generally. But again, congratulations on I just found that it was totally captivating, the effort. You forgot about everything. I mean,
on Saturday night, it was like I went to all 3 screens, and to see the cast and crew and just the Santa Fe group, it was great. And then I saw Gary sitting there, and like I said, we did Smoke Signals 25 years ago, and just to have people like you there, that came before me, just made me feel good about the whole thing.
Oh, I'm so happy that we as a community can find a way through someone like Tony Hillerman, a very prominent New Mexican, not necessarily of native descent directly, but certainly had an eye for our cultural, experiences here in New Mexico and in Arizona, and it's good work to bring forth. And Robert is such a senior. Robert Redford, we can't credit him enough for buying the material and having that vision and sticking to it. And all his work with the Sundance, which kind of raised all the efforts pretty well that we see that you've spoke of. So Robert has been a very significant contributor to that success.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the native filmmaking community that you see now, I wonder what percentage of them have had some touch with, the Sundance Institute labs and programs and festival, and it's a high number for those people that are working right now. So yeah, there's a huge, in my mind, there's a huge, um, blessing and gift that was given to our communities. I went to the labs in '95 as a director, and I couldn't believe that they were paying for me to be there for a month at their expense, just so I could workshop my scenes for what would become smoke signals. And, that kind of thing is just like, we're going to bring you up here and we're going to house you for a month, and we're going to let you work with Alan Davio, who shot E.T., and you're going to work with Steve Zalian, who wrote Schindler's List, and you have Bob Redford here. And, I was 24, I think, and workshopping Sherman Alexi's book. And I couldn't believe somebody was paying, for me to be up there. And they're like, I'd say, well, what do you think? And they'd say, well, what do you think? I'd say, well, I'm more about what you think. And they're like, no, it's about what you want to do, with this material and finding this material. And so I'd say the number of people that, native people working today that have had a touch with the Sundance Institute, and then, that association with Redford is just kind of incredible.
Dark Winds arrives in a moment when native content on TV is enjoying a 3-show boomlet, with season 2 of Reservation Dogs, the Peacock sitcom Rutherford Falls, and now Dark Winds. That's from The Hollywood Reporter.
Well, I'm shooting kind of low 90s on my best day, still going over 100 on the worst days. But what's your golf game like these days, Chris? I feel like
I
I got you started. Where are you taking it?
Yeah, I gotta give both of you guys credit for starting me golfing. I mean, that's a little known fact. I would not have started golfing if it weren't for both of you guys.
There you go.
Yeah, and what
Next
year?
round's on you, I guess.
Yeah, what year was that?
Oh, 10 years maybe now.
2012.
Yeah, it
That,
was sometime about 12 and
that was
13.
early in the Gary Farmer School of Golf.
Yeah, we both went there, and I've
The
learned a
Gary
lot.
Farmer School of Angry Golf.
I've learned a lot at the Gary Farmer School of Golf. I'm enjoying it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, yeah. But you shoot in the 80s once in a while, eh?
I shoot. I've shot in the mid '80s before, but not very often.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. Well, I got some new clubs, so you'll have to come and watch me hit the fucking ball straight. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And Gary, the horse shelter, we've done that for a couple years, which is the golf tournament that you do to support
Yeah,
the
it's the 28th of June.
Everybody, this was director Chris Eyre of Dark Winds, premiering tomorrow on AMC. That's June 12th on AMC and AMC Plus. Please check out the adaptation of the Tony Hillerman novels by Chris Eyre, executive produced by Robert Redford and George R.R. Martin. And I want to remind you all again to like and subscribe on YouTube. We're youtube.com/Film Talk Radio. and we'll see you next week.